Hello and welcome to my channel, The Way What Is Truth. My name is Peter. Remember to like, subscribe and comment down below. Now this is my second video on this global financial crisis which has affected approximately 143 countries, and even many American countries are suffering from food shortages and various other problems. I believe it's the USA and the UK which as well as countries such as Germany and France, which are suffering the most right now. And it's not just outlets suffering from a low supply of air fryers and like blankets. That's what people are buying right now, air fryers and blankets in the United Kingdom. And I should imagine it's a similar picture in many countries all over the world. And it's affected mostly the developed countries and the European countries. And before I go any further, I'd just like to say that I'd like to pray for anyone who's struggling financially. And if you want to talk to me about your financial problems or your personal stories in the midst of what happened during COVID, and by the way, COVID is obviously still with us, and what's happening now because of this war between Russia and Ukraine, right? So I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who would like to share a story or two with me, or share their own experiences with this, perhaps with their friends, their families, perhaps children if you have any. I could only imagine what it's like to struggle financially when you have children to take care of. Thankfully, I don't have any children of my own. But yeah, definitely talk to me, communicate with me about your personal experiences. Even if just one person comments down below, it'll all be worth it, yeah? Anyway, to give this video a bit of context, I'm going to read this article that I've found, and it's in the Global Finance, and below that it says Global News and Insight for corporate financial professionals, right? And it goes on to say countries with the lowest GDP growth 2022. And then it goes on to say after recessions, economies often bounce back more vigorously than ever, unless they stumble across new obstacles along the way. Now, this article was written on June the 22nd, 2022 by a person called Luca Ventura, just so you know. Now, I'm going to read through this as quickly and as thoroughly as possible, and then add my own inputs into it afterwards, if there's anything I can add to it at all. Then there's a second article I want to read as well. So here goes. Before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the global economy was set for the fastest post-recession recovery since World War II. The pandemic had shut down businesses, halted travels, left supply chains in disarray. The recovery was uneven across countries and regions, but as it often happens after deep recessions, it was strong, following a drop of 3% in 2020 and a bounce back of 6.1% in 2021. That's quite significant. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, was estimating global growth to continue strengthening by 4.9% in 2022. So a little bit lower, but still recovering steadily. Yeah? The war in Ukraine changed that. That's what all this is about. In its April's World Economic Outlook report, the fund reduced its previous forecast by 1.3 points to 3.6 points, with downgrades for 143 countries. Down the line, further setbacks are not out of the question. Granted, even before Ukraine, the world's economy was still grappling with the effects of the pandemic, which is common sense, and other numerous pre-existing conditions. Of course, there's always been people that have been struggling financially before COVID and before this Russia and Ukraine business. Presenting the report to the press, the IMF's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, listed some of them. Accelerated inflation. It has become a clear and present danger for many countries. Rising food and fuel prices are straining the budgets of ordinary families to breaking points. Financial tightening because of the need to counter inflation, hitting countries with high debt the hardest. Frequent, wide-ranging lockdowns in China, causing further bottlenecks in global supply chains. One additional dark cloud, she noted, hangs over our heads: the risk of geopolitical fragmentation. which could jeopardise the development gains of the last 75 years and also leaves unable to deal with the current crisis and to address other urgent global challenges such as climate change. I would just like to say that as I'm reading through this article and as I talk throughout the video, definitely I want you to contribute to this, and let's open up a discussion down below, right? Again, about your personal stories and experiences. I'd very much like to hear from anyone who has something to contribute to this, something to add to this. Now, it carries on like this. It almost comes naturally to think that negative and slow growth are maladies more likely to affect the smallest and most fragile global players. In reality, it is often the opposite. Not only many small emerging nations do rank among the fastest growing economies in the world, but among those countries that in recent years have been impacted by sluggish growth. One can find most Mediterranean European members, as well as surprises such as Germany, Switzerland, Finland and Japan. Indeed, some emerging and oil export nations will be among the fastest growing this year. These economies expand precisely because there is more room for growth compared to already mature and developed countries. So the countries that are still on the up and up. Yeah. They boast a younger population, They are improving their infrastructure, they are attracting new investments. So of course it varies from one country to the next. Other emerging and frontier markets, especially those that are bearing the brunt of rising food and fuel costs, will fare much worse. So let me read that again, and this is a crucial point. Other emerging and frontier markets, especially those that are bearing the brunt of rising food and fuel costs, such as the United Kingdom, where I live, will fare much worse. For them, the challenges of this multifaceted crisis are the most severe and include increased fiscal strain, collapse in internal and external demand, and political instability. These countries will endure a deeper, longer-lasting downturn that will halt or reverse hard-fought gains made over the past decade. COVID-19 triggered the first increase in global poverty in more than 2 decades. Rising inflation and the effects of the war in Ukraine have only made things harder. According to the World Bank, compared to pre-pandemic projections, these combined crises will lead to an additional 75 to 95 million people living in extreme poverty in 2022. All the more reason why people, us Christians, should be praying for the whole world, for a total number that is expected to lie between 657 million and 677 million. I'm just speechless. But what about those? I do apologise for some bizarre reason. I've got no idea why. I do apologise for this. I'm going to keep on rolling, but wow, I've never seen anything like that happen before. My Kindle was literally positioned perfectly. I mean, absolutely perfectly. And for no reason whatsoever, it just flipped forward. It was quite bizarre. Let me just... But that was crazy, okay? Hopefully it won't happen again. There was no vibrations on the table or anything. It was perfectly positioned and everything. I mean, it really, really was. Let me just put something there. I genuinely don't understand why that happened. That was crazy. That's the first time that's ever happened whilst doing a video. I do apologise. Anyway, but what about those nations directly involved in the conflict? War, contrary to what the old adage claims, is generally bad for business. At the very bottom of the global GDP ranking stands Ukraine, whose economy will contract this year by an estimated minus 35%, Russia minus 8.5%, and Belarus 6.4%. Okay. Countries marred by conflicts and violence, such as Syria or Afghanistan, have stood where these nations stand now. To this day, their financial and political situation is so bleak and uncertain that the IMF excludes them from its economic projections. Wow. And then it goes on to list a load of countries which I'm not going to read. Let me just skip through all this. So, yeah. Anyway, what I would like to do now, before I go on to the second article, is just mention a few things that I've learned. Yeah, apart from blankets selling like crazy because winter's coming in the UK, and air fryers, which by the way I'm going to buy one soon myself, an air fryer which uses little to no oil and saves on electric. So definitely check air fryers out if you haven't for some bizarre reason. And this video really is about bringing attention to the financial crisis and encouraging anyone to talk about it down below. And let's all pray as Christians in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ for us to help one another practically, spiritually, emotionally. We should talk to our friends and family, our neighbours, people in the church. We should ask if people are okay. There's an old lady down the road from me, which I have helped in the past. I'm not going to say how I've helped her, but I've helped her. And yeah. So yeah, there's all things we could do, even if it's just the small things in life, the practical things, like doing a little bit of shopping or giving someone some money, or giving somebody a phone call, or perhaps donating food if we can, that is, depending on our circumstances and situations, to donate food to food banks. Now, food banks outnumber McDonald's 2-1 now in the United Kingdom. That's crazy. It really, really is. Yeah, so I haven't been too badly affected by this financial crisis as of yet, but I should imagine within the next 2 to 3 months I'm going to feel it more and more and more, and no one knows how long this is going to go on for. This could go on for a very, very long time. I'd say for at least another 4 to 5 years. In fact, I don't think we're ever going to recover from this, if truth be told. Now I'm going to move on to the second article, which was written in the Guardian newspaper. Yes, so it starts off like this. UK cost of living crisis. Worse, oh dear, these adverts. Worse than the pandemic. Price rises push more people into financial trouble. Study shows poorest hit hardest as 1.6 million more UK households are struggling compared with late 2021. Now, this is an article written by a person called Robert Booth, and he's a social affairs correspondent, written on Monday, the 11th of July, 2022. And it's a 3-month-old article, but it applies just as much now as it did then. Excuse me, I have a bit of a sniffle today. You have to excuse me, I do apologise. Now, it goes on to say this. Soaring prices have plunged more people into financial trouble than COVID-19. According to a study tracking the fortunes of UK households since the start of the pandemic. Excuse me, I'm just going to put my lights on in the kitchen. It's getting a little bit dark here. There we are. You may not have noticed much of a difference in light, but I have, and it's just better. I should have turned it on before I started the video. Anyway, a total of 1.6 million more households are struggling than the last time the study of 6,000 households reported 9 months ago. It brings to 4.4 million, 1 in 6, the number of households estimated to be in serious financial difficulties across the whole population. That's a lot, 1 in 6. That's a tremendous number. The majority of those have cut the quality of food they eat. A third have pawned possessions, and a quarter have cancelled insurance, the research shows. Single parents, renters, disabled people and families with 3 or more children are worse affected. Credit card debt is rising and a quarter have 0 savings. As my dad says, it's the Tory government. In fact, he swears before he says the Tory government. He shouldn't do really, but he's got no tolerance for them whatsoever because they just look out for the rich. In very basic terms, they just look out for the rich and the poor. Well, you know. I'm really not into politics, but that's the gist of it anyway. Liz Truss, is that her name? I know her second name is Truss. She's now the Prime Minister. I've hardly done any research about her at all, but one look at her, I just think she's full of it. That's my personal opinion. I have little to no interest in politics, okay? Anyway, it goes on to say, the only group in less financial strife since October 2021 are households with income of more than 100,000, according to the study by Financial Fairness Trust and Bristol University. Nearly 4 in 10 UK households say their ability to afford holidays has been affected by the rise in cost of living. 4 in 10. Nearly 4 in 10. So you could say it's somewhere maybe 3.5 or something. I don't know what do you mean by nearly 4. So yeah, that's interesting. And then it goes on to say, this is the first substantial deterioration we have seen since tracking people's finances when the pandemic started, said Mubin Haq, the chief executive of, I don't know how to pronounce this, it's ABRDN. We should give it a proper name, not an acronym or whatever. Financial Fairness Trust. Times are tough for everyone, but it's those on the lowest incomes who are particularly feeling the effects of rising prices. Of course, I should imagine that although middle class homes will feel the squeeze, you see, a lot of these middle class people, unfortunately, they live beyond their means. Sometimes they borrow money, use credit cards, and they go 2-3 holidays a year, drive nice cars, live a certain lifestyle. You know, you get the idea. And a lot of people try and maintain that lifestyle. Whilst really they shouldn't be. They should just humble themselves and use this as a time to cut back and reflect and save money. But there you go. Yeah. So there is always the rich. There's plenty of rich people in the United Kingdom. But yeah, there's a huge mix of the working and the so-called working and middle class who are struggling financially. And it's obviously more working class than middle class. Anyway, it goes on to say the proportion of households considered secure has fallen from 38% to 31%, and Wales and Scotland are worse affected than England and Northern Ireland, with more than 1 in 5 households in serious difficulties financially. I'd just like to remind anyone who's watching this video and listening to me right now to pray for the whole world, this whole globe, throughout this entire generation and every generation to come until the Lord's return, for as long as this financial crisis exists. And COVID still exists, and so many other issues like animal cruelty, cruelty and neglect to children. Like I did with my previous video, I was praying for all the children all around the world. And now I'm just imploring anyone to pray for everyone who's struggling financially. Because you best believe there are people in hotels, people who are homeless, people that have got so much debt that they've got no hope of ever paying it off. People go to their utility bill providers to plead poverty, and then they get them in touch with charities. But basically, there's nothing anyone can do. They can do very, very little. They're doing, well, really the minimum to help people. That's what they're doing. And it means precious little. It's too little, too late, because all this is on the tail end of COVID, don't forget. Plenty of people have not recovered from COVID. So let's bear this in mind. Anyway, it goes on to say, soaring expenses have been driven by rises in energy bills, transport costs, and groceries in that order. The more I think about it, the more I think it's absolutely mind-boggling, this is. Last week, analysts predicted the energy price cap is on track to rise to £3,244 a year in October, but when it is next adjusted, up from £1,971 a year. Annual supermarket inflation hit 8.3% last month. Okay. Energy price cap is on track to rise to £3,244 a year. Wow. In October, when it's next, yeah, that's happened. When it is next adjusted, up from 1,971. That's big. It's a big difference. And then it goes on to say the rise in wholesale gas prices is driving rising energy bills. UK household energy price cap. Yes, and then it shows a graph. Look here, let me just show you this graph here. Yeah? See that clearly? Okay. The 3 most common tactics to cut costs during the period of the survey conducted in May to June were turning off the heating, reducing use of the cooker, and taking fewer showers and baths. Now, me personally, I haven't been taking less showers and baths, but what I have been doing is driving my car less and I'm going to buy an air fryer soon to cut down on my electricity costs. I looked in the Littlewoods catalogue earlier on, and I'm going to look for an air fryer. I'm going to buy one or two of them. I've got two written down anyway. But yeah, I'm driving my car a lot less, and I didn't really drive it a lot before. I only did 4,000 to 5,000 miles a year, thankfully. So aside from that, I haven't been too badly affected myself personally as of yet. But as the next month rolls on, then the next, I'm going to feel it more and more and more. Anyway, a guy called Dean Byrne, 62 years of age, a semi-retired IT project manager in Stockport, Greater Manchester, told The Guardian his financial predicament was a lot worse now than during the pandemic, and I should imagine that's the same for virtually everybody. He spends £620 a month on rent, which recently rose by 5%, and £260 a month on utilities and council tax, but only receives £850 a month in universal credit payments. Remember what I said earlier on? Whatever personal stories you have, definitely tell me down below. I definitely want to hear from anyone, because the more people contribute to this video, the better. And all this is about reaching out to people as a Christian, and to encourage other Christians to pray for the whole world and their friends and family and anyone they know who's struggling financially, and to give practical help, the more pragmatic, hands-on, on the ground help, like giving food to food banks or giving food to friends and family, that kind of thing. We should all become generous and try and help one another in any way we can. And then he goes on to say it isn't enough, and he has used savings and some emergency payments from the council. There you go. There's the chap, look there. No? Obviously quite a clever guy. Dean Byrne, near his home in Stockport. He is already in more than £7,000 of debt, has sold his car for scrap, uses food banks, and is eating less, particularly meat. Right, so yes, I was considering getting rid of my car, but as of yet I don't have to at the moment. I think I'm going to get it through Christmas, and then maybe scrap it or part exchange it if I still can. My Ford Focus 1.8 TDCi is a 2009 reg. It has dirty injectors, so during the cold weather it struggles to start ever so much. But it's still getting me from A to B okay. It's driving good for the most part. It sometimes struggles to start. It depends how damp or cold it is, but that's just my little personal story there. I may have to get rid of it for that reason. Okay. So he also walks for miles rather than taking the bus, and has cancelled TV subscriptions. Now, I've actually considered cancelling the internet or Netflix, but I'm not at that stage yet. All I've had to do as of now is drive a bit less, really, and I'm trying to be as careful as I can. I only put the central heating on when it's really, really cold. And then asked about how he might heat his home this autumn, he said, I am really not sure about how I'm going to do that. All the more reason why we need to pray as Christians. There's so many people that are either going to go cold, hungry, or both this winter, and who knows what's going to happen next winter and the winter after that. And we're talking about people's lives that have been ruined, and a lot of these people have children. You know, it's tough. So any one of us who is comfortable or rich or middle class, or who is doing okay or doing more than okay, we should think about other people who are less fortunate in our family, in our group of family, friends, people in the church, people down the street. It could be anyone. It says he no longer visits the pub or takes trips to the seaside. Well, I do neither of those things, so I'm okay in that regard. In his street after dark, windows flicker with the light only of TVs as neighbours save on electricity, he said. Come to think of it, I've seen that with one or two houses on my street as well. Last week, he went to the council because he is worried about becoming homeless. Let's all pray for the homeless in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, for this entire generation of homeless people and every generation of them to come until the Lord's return. Homelessness was already bad before COVID, before this financial crisis, so let's pray for all these people. I'm looking at the calendar and counting the days until I get paid again, he said. I've worked for 41 years. This has really affected me. See, this is why so many people are so depressed. They're so cynical. When they put all that work, they've gone to a place. I hope he's done a job that he's enjoyed for the past 41 years. He liked doing it and that, but It's sobering. There's a lot of hard-working people that are ending up on the streets, and it's just no good. Or if they're not on the streets, they may fear that they may end up on the streets, or they're just unable to pay their bills, heat their homes, buy enough food, or in debt. They've had to get rid of cars and so on and so forth. The proportion of households behind. Oh, sorry, it's just gone off. Wait a sec. For some reason, it went off. You have to excuse me. It's my phone. I'm going to have to find where I was now. I hope you're finding this interesting, and I hope and pray that this video is not too long. It's already on 25.5 minutes. Yeah. So, right, so I got to that chap. Yeah, so it goes on to say, last week he went to the council because he is worried about becoming homeless. I'm looking at the calendar and counting the days until I get paid again, he said. I've worked for 41 years. This has really affected me. The proportion of households behind on at least one bill jumped from 9% to 14%, the study showed. And now there's a lady called Faith Angwet from Southwark. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Southwark or Southwark? Southwark, that's how it's spelled. South London. Faith Angwet, 37, a single mother of two from Southwark. I really don't know how to pronounce that. You'll have to excuse me. Oh, it's there. Okay. South London, who used to work in fashion and retail, said her weekly shopping bill has risen from £200 during the pandemic to £400. She has cut back on spending on toothpaste, soap and washing powder and uses minimum lighting at night. This is ridiculous. Obviously, the cost of living in London is the highest of any other part of the country. If it isn't, then feel free to enlighten me in the comments down below. But as far as I'm aware, London has the highest cost of living in the whole of the United Kingdom. And then it goes on to say this. If you open my fridge, it's like a single person is living there rather than a family, she said. It's worse now than the pandemic. When I think about it, it's enough to make my head explode. This is no joke. It is definitely grimmer than before. Okay. And then that's it. That's the end of the article. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, one last time, I'd like to ask anyone to comment down below and add to this discussion that I'm trying to have with my viewers here. I don't get many viewers on my channel, but one comment, 1, 2, 3 comments would be great. Okay. So we should pray for those who are already homeless, pray for those who are about to become homeless, pray for those who could possibly become homeless, not to become homeless. It goes on and on and on, to pray for the children, the teenagers, those from dysfunctional families. And there's something else I want to mention is domestic abuse. There's been an increase of domestic abuse and violence in homes because of all this extra financial stress. So we need to pray for the animals, we need to pray for the children, the teenagers, all the families, all those who are struggling, all those who are in debt. We don't need to feel sorry for those who are, these types of people who own 2 cars when they don't need 2 cars. You get the idea. They may own more or whatever. These people that are trying to maintain a certain lifestyle no matter what, they're still trying to go on 2 or 3 holidays a year, or even if they're not going on holidays, they may try and keep up appearances even though they're struggling financially behind closed doors. And that describes millions upon millions upon millions of people in the UK. We're trying to keep up appearances, we're trying to drive our same cars that we had before instead of getting rid. It's ridiculous, and we should all be using this as a time to pray, to reflect, to have humility, to help friends and family, to check on our neighbours to the best of our ability, to give what we can to food banks, and to read the Bible, to intercede for the whole world, this entire generation of people that have been affected by COVID and this war between Russia and Ukraine. It goes on and on and on, and who knows what else may happen in the future as well. So let's keep our eyes peeled, our ears open, and let's listen to the cries of this world and to pray. Okay, so I'm looking forward to reading any comments that I'm going to get down below. I thank you so much for watching. I hope those 2 articles that I've read have been enlightening I just wanted to read them to give my viewers an idea about what I'm talking about and to give everyone the lowdown about what's happening. Okay, bye bye and take care.